Everyone. I welcome all of you, whichever part of globe you are joining in. Thanks for sparing time and attending this session with us. As the world is going through a bit of a turmoil, as we see both from economy vantage point as well as rising geopolitical tensions. But at Everest Group, we are seeing that there are some demand green shoots when it comes to workplace specifically, and that makes us believe that the investment cycle that started round about pandemic and then got over probably this year or last, there is one more investment cycle in store as we enter 2025 across all the agencies such as IMF or ECB or World Bank. The forecast for global GDP is higher than 2024. That gives us a bit more confidence of that enterprises are going to spend a lot more on their workplace initiatives as compared to what they did in 24. If we move on, we are going to discuss three broad themes today. One is the shift in dynamics, as we say. Why do we believe that investment strategies of enterprises are going to change from a workplace vantage point? And then what are some of those essential elements in navigating these workflows transformation? And then, of course, we will summarize with our recommendations, both for the buy side enterprises as well as provider side. And then we will have some time for Q&A as well. If you move on. And, as I said, there is some bit of hope that 25 from an economy vantage point is going to be better than 24. I think, of course, only the time will tell, given the fact that so many different things are happening at once. But in general, I think the economic environment, the rate cuts that have already happened, and I think they may happen even more going forward. A lot of the clients almost getting frustrated by holding their spending for so long that they now appear to be of the opinion that yes, now they need to spend if they have to transform their workplace. And then, of course, technology adoption. I mean, in our research, we have found that the conversational AI, Gen AI influenced conversational AI market for workplace and IT management is doubling every year, which is a very strong point. And somebody like a Microsoft keeps talking about how much growth their Copilot have seen. But I would like to have Prabhneet here and share some point of view and then take it forward from here. Prabhneet?
Thank you, Yugal. So, like you mentioned, we are at a very interesting turn when we talk about digital workplace market dynamics. And we are seeing that we have already bottomed out. And from the challenges and uncertainty, we believe that in 2025, we will move to growth and opportunity. When we talk about the challenges and opportunity in 2024, there were largely three big buckets that were impacting the market. So there were obviously macroeconomic factors, recessionary sentiments across all the major developed countries, especially US. There were so many analysts, financial analysts that predicted that there will be a recession. And there was geopolitical instability. This led to the financial stringency, which is the second bucket. It led to a lot of scrutiny of expenses. So the leaders wanted immediate, clear ROI instead of focusing on the long-term returns. And then there was also technology mistrust. Although there were so many interesting transformations that came out in the market, like generative AI and Metaverse in the earlier years, there wasn't enough trust or proof points that could onboard the leaders to invest in these platforms and solutions. But now, as we move into 2025, we see that this will change a lot. And like you mentioned, Yugal, there has already been one rate cut of 50 basis points, and this is one of the biggest one in the last 4 years. And there are more anticipated rate cuts in the coming years. This will obviously lead to more flow of investments through the enterprises. And that is where we see a resurgence of investments, increased capital flow, and focus on long-term value delivery rather than just short-term ROI. And then finally, the technology adoption. We have already seen very strong proof points coming around generative AI, around co-pilots, and even around immersive collaboration. So we see that this is paving a good way for transmission oriented leaders to adopt these technologies, and they now do not have to go into waters that have uncharted. They already have some pathway wait for them. And if we move to the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about why these both of these what is the strong relationship between both the realization cycle and investment cycle. So post the pandemic, we obviously had a very strong investment cycle. All of the enterprises just jumped into the collaboration solutions and technology. They just wanted to ensure that their business continuity gets maintained. But after that, it got a little subdued because they wanted to realize those investments before getting into any other new investments. And also they thought that they're not getting enough ROI. So that went on for the last few years. We were in the realization cycle. But we see that now again, we will be getting into another investment cycle in the coming years. So what were some of the demand themes and the characteristics for the last realization cycle? So some of the demand themes were like platform and vendor consolidation. Like I mentioned, there was a lot of investment from enterprises to ensure their business continuity. So a lot of platforms and vendors were onboarded to ensure that. Then there was verticalization of the workplace and even a lot of investments into AI and automation for the operational efficiency. And some of the characteristics for this was small team transformations, and non-IT decision makers were taking the lead in all of these transformations. But now when we come into 2025, we believe that generative AI, co-pilot, employee experience, these will be some of the key themes that will lead all of these transformations. And we have a lot of interesting content throughout this webinar where we will deep dive into this and also explain what is this strong balance between the realization and the investment cycle.
Very interesting. So, Prabhneet, I know whenever we talk about transformation, I think the everyone thinks that okay, everything is going to get disrupted. But are there any specific, if we call it non-disruptive innovation? And I think this was one of the questions that also came up during registration. Are there non-disruptive innovations as well, especially in sectors like, let's say, financial services?
Yep. Very interesting question, actually, Yugal, because usually what we get asked about is about disruptive innovation and less about the non-disruptive ones. But of course, banking is one sector where, the leaders, they do not want a lot of disruption. They and want to ensure that the business remains stable. So this does make sense. And what we did see were three, four main themes here. One is VDI, which has been the key theme for some years now. So to ensure that while the employees get access to their applications and data, it does remain secure as well. But then we are also seeing a lot of investment in DaaS. So while this also saves the cost for the enterprises when they invest into DaaS solutions, it also ensures that the user experience is maintained. And then finally, we are seeing a lot of investment into cloud-related UCaaS solutions. So again, this is not only just user experience oriented theme that is coming up, but it also helps in flexibility, scalability, and ensuring that business continuity when they talk to their enterprise customers, that is maintained.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So if we move on and bring up our first poll, and I've the poll is there for all of the participants to share their point of view, and it will be very good for us to just juxtapose this with some of the research that we end up doing. Our enterprise pulse report that we did on workplace had some very interesting insights around where the efficiency led optimization resides in prioritization versus employee experience. So it would be good to see maybe for just for a few seconds more, uh, trying to see what the audience thinks around their primary driver for workplace investment as they move into 2025, and I can already see that operational efficiencies are
Yep.
outweighing others, which is not that different, but yeah. So yeah, I think yes, we have stopped the poll, but Udit and Prabneet, I think I recall in our research we had operational efficiency also as one of the key driver, and then followed by experience. But anything you two would want to share here?
I think it
I
is.
think this is largely in line. Sorry, Prabhneet, you want to go first?
No, no, you're the please go.
Yeah, I think this is largely in line, and I would actually, appreciate the candor and honesty of this group, because more often than not, I've heard a lot of enterprises, people talking about experience all the time, but when it comes to contracting, it's about, okay, what is the cost saving that you can give us? So I do appreciate the honesty within this group. I think given it's the need of the hour, operational efficiencies, and this ties back beautifully with what we were talking about, the small T transformation, the non-disruptive part of it. And there were a lot of investments that were made in 2021, 2022. So I think this is the last bit where people want to get to an optimized, efficient estate within their workplace, which sets them up beautifully for the next investment cycle that we just talked about.
And I
Interesting.
guess this very well validates what we also publish in our Pulse report. This is how we also got the rating when we had the interaction with the enterprises.
Okay,
But
so
Yugal,
if
I
we,
know a lot
hmm,
of folks would be heartbroken seeing the employee experience numbers, right? For workplace, this is almost like, 10%. It's almost too outrageous given everyone is employee centric as part of the narrative. So yeah, this would be heartbreaking for a lot of folks.
yeah. So if we move ahead, and I would want to hand it over, Udit, to you around those key towers that we focused on. Some of the transformative around be it co-pilots, be it generative AI, immersive collaboration, and then of course employee experience. Despite the fact that we probably did not get too much enthused audience when it came to employee experience. Over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Yugal. And yeah, that's a good, setup for this section that I'm going to talk about. And we are focusing more just as, prelude to the segment, we are focusing more on the destructive technologies. Prabneet did talk about some of the things that are current priorities. So VDI, DAS, two more things I will add is something like modern provisioning or autopilot-based provisioning, and, your something like SCCM to Intune migrations. So all these are good current priorities, but if we take a more long-term strategy outlook on these are the four key disruptive essential technologies. And we'll start with co-pilots on the next slide. And this is again, it's a darling topic of everyone, right? Everyone wants to talk about it. I think, but the space is very complex, right? What is Copilot? What is not Copilot? If we have an agent, whether it is a chatbot, is it Copilot? I think it's very, it's very fragmented. It's very complex. But before I get into the slide, I'll just try to draw a picture around it, right? If we talk about employee experience or even productivity, the best way to categorize them is active levers and passive levers. So passive levers are something that you do once a action or an incident or a ticket has happened. So something like chatbots, your agents resolving ticket quicker, those are passive events. Copilot is an active lever. So if it about experience or productivity, it helps you improve that on the go and does not wait for an incident or a ticket to happen. And at least Copilot as a concept, I think the research is secular in this trend, right? There's a lot of research that is being done around Copilot on an ongoing basis, but mostly people have found good value from Copilot. Again, it's not an out and out winner. There are cases when Copilot has not done well, right? I think there's also challenge with how Microsoft has positioned it, but it's not it will not solve world hunger problems, but if you're looking for specific cases, I think there's a lot of value. So before that, we were more focused around, how do we get Copilot adopted, POCs and all. I think moving forward, it will be the next stage, which is enablement, having the right talent roadmap, having the right use cases, decluttering the space, right? It's one thing to say, hey, Copilot can do 100 things, but then ultimately you realize, okay, in 30% of the cases, it does not work, right? Something like Microsoft Excel. So I think we need to focus on things where it works. And if we move to the next slide, I'd like to draw a distinction between when I say Copilot, I'm not just referring to M365 Copilot, right? These are what we will say pre-built or out of box Copilot, But what is very interesting in this space is there's a growing traction for building these co-pilots or agents from scratch. And again, the research, the examples are out there. Most of these companies, instead of going with a pre-built co-pilot like M365, which has out-of-box use cases, focused on building these on their own. And again, there are good examples, good reasons as to why they are doing it, right? There are cost advantages, better control from an enterprise lens. And again, I would love to have, I'm very passionate about this topic, so I'd love to have a conversation around this. But what my biggest takeaway from for our listeners are out there are, when you think about Copilot, don't just restrict yourselves to the pre-built Copilot like M65, even Google has one, right? There might be value to explore with your partner. Hey, I don't need the whole set of use cases and capabilities that come with these Copilots. Are there specific use cases that we can build? And that's why we are also seeing the rise of, agentic AI, agent-based platform. So we are in an era where we are moving from solution-based co-pilots to now platform-based. And if we move to the next slide, what we have there is the same thing, right? Your strategy should not be just focused on one aspect. Ultimately, in certain use cases, you might find, okay, it's good to go ahead with a out of box copilot like M65, right? Especially if your tools of work are largely office suite. You don't have a very broad IT team to develop these capabilities. But in a lot of these cases, you might find building copilots to be a better solution. So again, be open to the concept of having an hybrid estate or either of these two versus going with a preconceived notion. Hey, this is a solution that is out there and that's the best thing out there, right? Because we have seen that that's not the best thing, especially M365 Copilot has been out there, but people have found benefit, but there are great improvement areas as well.
I guess this is the right time to address one of our another questions. Since you mentioned agentic AI, and this is one topic we also have been discussing a lot internally. So one of the questions from our participants was what kind of services are required today and in the near future by enterprises for deploying, adopting, and scaling with agentic AI?
Yeah, I think that, and that's a great question, right? So first is, for anyone who has this confusion around, okay, there was Copilot, what is agentic AI? I think the concept is simple. Agentic AI is basically a platform using which, again, low code, no code, you can create agents for specific use cases, right? So that's when I said we are moving from a solution era to a platform era. This is what I was referring to. But when we talk about the services opportunity, see, for any software, the services opportunities can be classified into three buckets. One is assessment consulting based, second is design implementation, and the third part is managed services. If I'm talking from a vendor service vendor lens. Now, even with Copilot, what we saw was the biggest revenue pie for service providers was within assessment and consulting with things like, hey, is my estate data secure when I'm using Copilot, right? Data privacy issues. Is my data ready and clean around this? Can you help me do a POC? Can you help me build a business case? So most of the service providers, the revenue that they were creating around Copilot was assessment and consulting. And this will continue to be the low-hanging fruit for even agentic AI. Where things become interesting with agentic AI is, instead of a vendor dictating, how the roadmap for this product will evolve, the control passes to the enterprises. Now, enterprises have control. Hey, we have this platform, but we will decide which agents, which capabilities we want to develop, how we want to use that, how does the product evolution happens. So because of this, I think there are going to be bigger opportunities around design implementation as well as managed services, right? So a short answer is assessment consulting in the short run and the low hanging fruit, but much bigger scope around design, implementation, and managed services because of the say that vendors and enterprises have when you're thinking about agentic AI.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. With that, let's move to the next slide. And this is, our, a token of appreciation for everyone who has joined in, whether it's morning or evening for you. What we are doing is, as a token of appreciation, we are giving you two giveaways as part of this session. So one is a complimentary session for enterprises if they want to understand, what's the latest and greatest happening in the digital workplace industry, what our best in class peers are doing about it, and what would be a right fit strategy for you, right? We are offering you a complimentary session along with a complimentary report, which again captures and summarizes all the key insights and trends from our, or exhaustive 2024 research. So again, that's something more information in chat and how to get those. And with this, what I'll do is we'll move to the next part, which is another iteration of generative AI within workplace. So we talked about Copilot. Another interesting topic around this is conversational AI, right? And I will bring in Prabhneet to talk about this. But before I do, I just wanted to call out, we have been covering the conversational AI space for quite some time. This year, we even did a peak matrix assessment around this. I think generative AI has almost like kick-started, provided a booster to this segment. I'm not just saying it for the sake of it. The improvement and sophistication in capabilities, demos, when we use some of those tools, I think it has come a very long way with generative AI. What these tools used to be 1, 2 years back, I have no qualms in saying they were suboptimal. But now these have actually become more intuitive, just giving a single prompt. And if it has like 5, 6 layered functions, these tools have started to pick up those. So I think in terms of tech maturity, conversational AI as a space has grown massively, right? But I think Prabneet, we'll love to hear what you have on this topic.
Sure. Thanks, Sudhit, and very well summarized, I guess. One, it is very interesting to see how co-pilots and generative AI, they're so closely linked, even conversational AI. And second, what you just mentioned, that conversational AI as a transformation theme, it has been around for so long, but the adoption has been from the users has always been so low. We used to keep hearing from the enterprises that we have invested so much in our conversational AI platform, but we are seeing only about 0.5% of adoption, 1% adoption, and the expectations never met. And that is what we have on this slide also, some statistics around how 55% of enterprises achieve less than 50% of expected ROI, or they were never even achieving the timeline they expected to achieve their ROI within. And generative AI will definitely give it a huge, not just boost, I would say a nitro boost to this conversational AI transformation theme. And we are already seeing so many strong proof points within this. So on the right side, you see some of those statistics around that. So 50% of enterprises are already leveraging generative AI features. And why not? Because it is so enticing. The entire benefits that they can derive from incorporating generative AI, investing a little bit more into their already invested solutions, it really elevates what they can do with it. And they are seeing so much benefits around employee experience enhancement and productivity enhancement. And if we can move to the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit more about what were the limitations of the traditional conversational AI solutions and how generative AI is elevating those. So we just have three functionality buckets here, but obviously this is a non-exhaustive list, and there are a lot more other functionalities that generative AI is helping elevate within this realm. So the first is information retrieval, and earlier, conversational AI platforms, they were just ran with the data stored in the internal knowledge bases. And there was a lot of manual effort required to update those FAQ documents. But now with generative AI, it can leverage multiple information sources, internal and external. And obviously, there are concerns from enterprise and security, but now we're seeing advancement in that area also. So there is a lot of research going on into content grounding and retrieval augment generations. So that I believe it help address those concerns as well, while really elevating the knowledge base that can be accessed by these platforms now. And when we come into the unstructured data analysis part, this is very interesting actually, because earlier, the conversational AI platforms, they was very robotic. And like Udit, you also mentioned that users, they did not really want to interact with that. And they, a lot of times they wanted to skip the chatbot or the conversational AI platform and just want to interact with the human person. And it just defeated the entire purpose of the investment. But now they can really analyze the unstructured data and converse with you in a very human-like format. So, for example, earlier they were just able to analyze the data in the text format, but now they can even analyze audio, video, and even images. And that is helping users a lot. And then finally, the human-like dialogue management. So earlier, there were a lot of challenges around complex inquiries. They were not able to identify your intent, or if a user is angry or using sarcasm. The conversational AI chatbots, the platforms, they were not able to identify that. But now with generative AI, they become very intelligent. And this is where we heard from our technology vendors also, with whom we interacted as part of assessment. This is one area that they're really investing in, and they're trying to solve this a lot. They're trying to reduce the latency and make it as humanly as possible, the entire conversation.
So Prabhneet, I think you already addressed, one of the questions that was asked during registration was around the impact and the benefit realization from generative AI. I guess you already addressed some of this, but is there anything else to add? Otherwise, I think we can move ahead.
I think even one other thing that is very interesting is that this has really made the entire technology very democratized. Earlier, people like you and me who do not know a lot of coding or technology, don't have the advanced technology skills, they were not able to derive the benefits out of these kind of platforms. But now simple employees and users, without spending a lot into getting those technology skills, they can derive really strong benefits. And that's what we are seeing with these platforms now.
Okay, let's move ahead.
And this is the assessment that Udit was just talking about. We just a couple of months ago completed this assessment and published it. And like I mentioned, what we are hearing from the technology vendors and the themes that they are, the demand themes that they are getting from their enterprise customers, is that they want these solutions to be very human-like. They want their employees to use them, utilize them. And for that, they are investing a lot on reducing the latency, making the voice very neural and less robotic, and even adding personality and humor into these solutions. And then second insight that we got through this assessment is that these technology vendors, they are really focusing on creating contextualized and use case specific solutions for the enterprise customers. So it's two very interesting areas we saw that were key focus areas for these vendors. And Yugal, if we can move to the next one. Yeah. So while this journey is very attractive and all the enterprises do want to jump into it, they're also cautious about the risk that come with this adopting of generative AI. And we have just highlighted some of the risks and also how enterprises can mitigate those risks without losing a lot on their business or the investments. So the first one is, of course, data privacy and security. This is the biggest risk here, because you might fall out of the compliances that you need to do with respect to your region, such as GDPR, or there's also risk of leakage of user PI and cyber attacks. And the main solution here is to ensure there's authorized access, and even you can use a lot of synthetic data for training and local data. And here again, the concept around content grounding also comes into the picture. The second one I'll just touch briefly on is the reliability part. There have been obviously a lot of concerns from enterprises around the hallucinations of these conversational AI platforms. There are misleading conversations and inaccuracies in the answers that are provided to the employees. So again, one important step here that we always suggest to our enterprise clients is to keep a human in the loop when you implement the solutions. Especially in the initial training phase, it is very important to have a human in the loop. And even afterwards, once you have implemented the solution, it is important for the human to keep on checking on the quality of the answers that are being provided by the platform. And the final one is around bias and ethics. There have been concerns by enterprise around the environmental impact of these solutions. And or since in regions like Europe, it is now directly tied to your taxes and your revenue that you need to be compliant with certain regulations. This is one area that again enterprises are wary of, but we are seeing a lot of investments around efficient algorithms, which will reduce the energy that are being spent for these generative AI solutions. There are others also, but I'll just skip those for offline for participants.
Perfect. Thank you, Prabneet. I think we have talked a lot about generative AI, co-pilots. I think we have done our due, right? But let's move on to the next slide, which focuses on immersive collaboration. And in case if anyone is confused, what we're largely referring here is application of metaverse and metaverse, similar capabilities within the digital workplace, right? And everyone is talking about Gen AI, everyone is talking about co-pilots, right? But metaverse has almost become like the forgotten, prodigy. I call metaverse the Pluto of tech solar system, who everyone seems to forget, right? But I think it's not fair. So hyping something too much beyond its stage is also unfair. What is also unfair is undermining a tech that had a lot of promise, but it was oversold, overpromised, right? So we still think, and we do want to call this out. I think not just metaverse, but overall the immersive collaboration tech, digital twins. I think there are specific pockets of growth linked to this that we should be focused on, right? And there's still a lot of research. I won't say the research is unanimous that everyone is going to invest in metaverse. That's not going to happen. But what we are seeing is there is still sustained growth within this demand themes. Specific industries, specific companies have this as part of their roadmap, and there's some research to talk about it, right? But ultimately, what we need to understand is it's not a mother of all, motherhood solution. It's not going to be applicable everywhere. Even the vendor community needs to stop putting it as their default solution. You need to identify use cases that are relevant for it, right? And immersive collaboration, we have seen it's not an experience conversation. The problem with immersive, and the reason we call it immersive is a lot of time tends to feel fabricated, not original or not natural to us. And that's where the trick lies, making this tech immersive. But how do we go about it, right? And that's what we talk in the next slide. So again, a lot of content for offline read as you detail out your strategy around it. But key pointers from our side is the metaverse tech immersive, collaboration need to work with your existing tech as much as possible. What we have seen is, and this was well established in the research and the poll, people are not looking for a lot of disruption. If a change means changing 10 things, then companies are deprioritizing it for the moment, right? So create something without breaking existing stuff. And the second part is you don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of good research, a lot of good investments, good IP have already been built and developed around metaverse. It's only the fact that given Gen AI, and the scrutiny on investments that it has taken a backseat. But if we talk from an IP lens, a lot of good IP, good use cases has already been developed. So more and more companies should try to leverage those capabilities versus reinventing the wheel from scratch. And I think the biggest application of metaverse is going to be in specific use cases. You just need to identify it, and they are across the workplace segment. For example, within desk side, we have seen within oil and gas, a lot of companies are using metaverse to resolve issues for their personas who are working from, let's say, an oil rig, where if an expert needs to be sent, it's almost like they need to hire a chopper. Someone goes there, fix the issue, and comes back. There we have seen work, fabulously. And another important point to note here is generative AI came after metaverse. So a lot of metaverse graphic, the use cases that we saw, those were before the Gen AI age. Now with Gen AI, they have actually evolved a lot. It looks much more natural. So I think the key takeaway here is there might be select pockets where it would be worth to revisit how immersive collaboration can work. And with this, let's move to the last, disruptive theme that we have, which is employee experience, right? And as I said at the start, the way to look at employee experience is active employee experience and passive employee experience. Once something is broken, something is not working up, right? That's where passive workplace experience comes into the picture. How quickly you resolve it, right? The mean time to resolve. How quickly do you get a new device? But and this is where the industry has been hung for quite some time, right? Most of the investments previously in the last decade have been around passive experience. If something is broken, how quickly can we repair it? The shift that I've seen in last few years is more and more focus is moving towards active workplace experience. Are there tools, technologies, use cases that can improve your experience without something being broken, right? Copilot is a good example around it. Similarly, something like it's one thing to say, okay, my laptop broke. We have a device swap policy. So you can actually just go there in 10 minutes, get a new device, right? That is great. That is passive experience. The important part to counter here is when you're giving me a device in 10 minutes, it's not positive experience. It's more like the dissatisfaction did not come in. So I was not dissatisfied, but it's unfair to assume that I was delighted by that, right? Because still something went wrong with my machine and I had to change. Versus something like, making my proactively improving my machine if my machine is running out of memory, if something needs to be done, doing it proactively so that the machine works at a level that it provides me delight. I think this is where we are seeing more and more investments happening. And that's also what the research indicates, right? 64% enterprises listed digital experience management. Again, active experience lever. Something like XLAs, another active workplace experience level. You're not waiting for something to break down. You're measuring experience on a real-time basis and making changes on the go. You're not waiting for the contract to run out. Now, shifting to another part here, I think sometimes experience tends to get approached by a cookie cutter approach, right? But what is a delightful experience for me might just be table stakes for you. That's why it's very important to understand the intricacies, the context of different people, different personas that are coming into the picture. And as an example, I'd like to talk about the frontline persona, right? And again, this is just one example to talk about it, but any holistic workplace experience strategy needs to understand, okay, how does it varies from persona, from industries, from organization of different sizes, even if it's last of the priority right now. But we have seen that it changes. And as we move to the next investment cycle, again, talent crunch comes up. We might have a mini talent war. We'll see experience become a more priority, right? But on the next slide, what we do is we do a deep dive for just the frontline workers. Again, we have taken this as an example to highlight the fact, why experiences can be difficult and different, right? So frontline workers, they behave in a very different fashion from a normal white collar, worker. So their workplace is not fixed. They might be working on the shop floor. It could be a retail chain, or even it could be, on the road. So again, they don't have a fixed workplace. That's a dynamic workplace. Their devices might be very different. So if it's a retail chain, their device of, livelihood and working is a POS machine. And we just recently saw what happened with POS machines at airport, right? So the main factor to understand here is this is a persona whose needs, challenges, and priorities are very different from any other, let's say, office-based persona. Their devices are different, their work timings are different, their workplace environment is different. But this is a persona who's very close to your customer, right? So if you want to impact customer experience, the way to that goes through employee experience, right? And that's where employee experience equity leads to customer experience equity. And with this, I think we are all set for another poll, right?
Yeah, let's just bring this up and have people comment on this, around what are some of their organization priorities, and again, it will be interesting to see where some of them talk about it and how does this link with the previous poll that we had. But these four big things, and I guess there was a question similar to it as well, which we may end up taking during the Q&A. But Udit and Prabhneet, to me, looks like Metaverse had really had some good heartburn, and immersive collaboration seems to be getting the rough edge. But just maybe we will run for 1 or 2 more seconds and then stop. Okay, I think we can stop the poll now. Maybe okay. Uh, any surprises here, Udit or Prabneet? I think, conversational AI with generative AI, given the Microsoft overhang and overbearing Microsoft in this part of the technology segment, it was understood, but so are enterprise co-pilots as well. And both of the things that influence employee experience perhaps got the short end, which is very similar to what we saw in the first poll.
Yeah, I think it's a classic case of over-promising and under-delivering. And I assume that a lot of responses here, when they are focused on enterprise co-pilots, they are talking about those pre-built co-pilots, something like M365. I think what has happened was Microsoft positioned it in a way that it can do 100 things when it was not actually effective across. So, for example, it was very good with something like Microsoft Teams, use cases around that summarization and all. It was terrible with Microsoft Excel. When people did that, I think the way Microsoft positioned it, it became less about, how good it works with Microsoft Teams, but the conversation became, it's terrible with Microsoft Excel, the business case is not fine. So I think it had a head start, but it has not been able to make inroads into enterprises. It has not scaled enough, which is, I think, what even the survey is saying. And now with agentic AI and all, so it will be very interesting to see how now I think the road for co-pilots is much tougher. They had a head start that they almost blown it away. So I think this is a true testament. I think same thing. There's some heartburn, both with immersive and to some extent co-pilot, and that's why other things are looking much better.
And I guess it's not surprising to see conversational AI with generative AI at the top because there is a lot of comfort that enterprises have with this transformation. And there are so many proof points already. We have so many case studies that the benefits that they're driving out of these platforms, and it is also easier for the employees to adopt. That's what we're seeing. Like that you were talking about, what Microsoft promised initially in the wave one of the Copilot is not what they were able to achieve. There was still some friction from the users when it came to adopting and using all of those features. Even in this version in the wave two, they have, I think, given some 700 plus features, but obviously employees will not be using all of those. But it's much easier for employees to interact with conversational AI led generative AI and to drive real benefits out of that transformation. So not surprising to see that on the top here.
Okay, so if we move ahead, let's just summarize some of the recommendations that we have both from the buy and the provider side. If you move on, from an enterprise point of view, see, first of all is you will need to invest again. I think that earlier investment cycle has run its course. The pandemic fueled investment that has run its course by most likely 23 end and 24 mid. So 25 needs to have one more round. Generative AI has started to become very critical, and whether we like it or not, some of the large tech vendors are going to push a lot of this. And then given the fact that this is an area where getting investments is easier than the others, uh, the workplace leader are going to benefit if they ask with the right ROI and a business case. And then using the see we can never, despite the fact that today we saw that employee experience probably did not get as much vote as generally it does, but that remains critical. And how do we improve that employee experience, collaboration, given hybrid work is not going away in general despite many RTO mandates? How do you analyze, contextualize, and then drive that kind of an engaging employee experience? And for the supply side, as the demand environment improves, hopefully, what are your big bets? What type of solutions are you taking to your enterprise clients? And then creating that ROI model for them, rather than waiting for them to invest, proactively seeding ideas and then helping them to find the right relevant ROI-led use case from a workplace vantage point. That will be important. Showing them where have you adopted. So it's as much about creating your own in-house solutions, but at the same time, whether you have invested in them yourself. And last but not the least, the point that we made for enterprise on employee experience, it holds true for provider as well. Human centricity is absolutely critical, and it is all the more relevant to the segment that Udit spoke about, which is the field service agent. And now, if you move ahead, let's just I think there was a question from Carl earlier. I think
Carl.
we discussed some of it and how people are sort of making case for Microsoft Copilot despite its cost. One of the, at least what we have seen, is frankly not many people are making any case. They are being asked by their C-level execs, okay, you need to invest in it. So it's the other way around, something which is very unique to generative AI, that many times they are getting investment rather being asked. Now that doesn't mean they do not have to show an ROI. It is expensive, but I guess C-suite is a lot more comfortable. But I'll have Udit and Prabhneet to chime in. What have we seen in our workplace research on that?
Yeah, so I think ROI is a big question, no doubts about it, right? So, Carl, I think this question is very real. And if you just take a purely ROI based lens, then in a lot of cases, it's not making a lot of sense. And this is where I was referring to the point that the positioning of these things is not right. I think the price point is not right, but Microsoft is still pursuing with it. But I think over time, there are going to be some changes given how the industry is shaping up, because that adoption has not happened. But to give you the perspective of the companies that are going ongoing with this journey, right, and why as to they are doing it, so first thing is, in certain cases it is actually very helpful. So if you are a company that largely depends on office suite for your day-to-day work, right, your cost of talent is very high. So think of something like a professional services firm, right? Your cost of talent is very high. Then in those cases, the business case for Copilot could still be made, and it's functional there, right? The second point to this is a lot of companies are also doing this out of FOMO, the fear of missing out. So what Yugal was referring to, it's a CXO mandate. Hey, what are we doing about it? Because just there's so much buzz around Copilot. So every company wants to jump on the bandwagon and say, hey, are we also exploring it? And people understand that it's a journey. You won't be able to ace it from the world go. You'll need to understand how to give prompts. The system will learn. Your employees will understand, okay, these are 50 things that everyone talks about. I need to focus on these 5 things, which it does very well. So people understand it's a journey and they want to be part of it. But I think there's also a very strong FOMO effect having there, because everyone is talking about it. I also want to have it. But the short answer to this is it's not just ROI that is driving the traction for Copilot. It's a much bigger promise overall.
And I think
Mhm.
also what we are seeing is that enterprises are initially adopting this for specific personas where it really makes sense a lot for them. So, for example, we are seeing enterprises adopting co-pilots for their data analysts or their designers, where improving productivity gives them a lot of cost benefits. So, if what Microsoft has promised in the wave 2 of Copilot, for especially for the Excel, if they're actually able to deliver all of that, I think it will make a lot of more sense for specifically, like for example, data analysts. So I think this is the kind of approach that we are seeing enterprises take, going by persona and business function rather than adopting the platform enterprise wide. And once they see that ROI, maybe they will, commit more to the solution.
So then I think, Prabhneet, Udit, we have probably time for one more question. And we got a very interesting question during the registration process that given technology changes every now and then, and now with AI, it is changing even faster. From a investment point of view, enterprise point of view, how do you ensure that you are invested for the future, but you do not keep investing? I mean, what's a what's a way to design the workplace in a way you are future proofing it to some extent, or maybe using models like as a service consumption? What's our take on it?
Yeah, so again, I'll start and then maybe Prabneet will add. I think a lot of times investments are made on the basis of, hey, because I heard or I read in this report that this is what other companies are doing it, and we almost get fascinated about this and try to replicate it. What we need to understand is your context, your enterprise estate, your user maturity might be very different from others. So even when I say M65, there are ROI challenges. It's for those pre-built, right? The business case for having your productivity twin or something to help you with this, that is well justified, right? Similarly, as a service, I think Yugal, you raised a very good point. We keep hearing about device as a service, desktop as a service, and it's almost like everyone wants to say, hey, this looks like very interesting. We should be doing it. It's not helpful in all the cases. We have done the business cases, we have talked to clients, we're trying to understand. We have seen it works in almost 40 to 50% of the cases because the demand themes are such, right? Their workforce is not fixed, it's very dynamic, right? There might be layoffs, new people getting hired, too many locations to service. They want to preserve on upfront cost. So they don't want to get into capex. So there needs to be drivers that are solved by this solution or tech stack that you're referring to. Just because someone is saying, hey, there's a solution, should not be a measure to adopt it. It should correlate and tie back to your problem. So instead of starting what's out in the market, the starting point should be your employees, right? You need to put them at the center. What are my challenges and pain points? So when we talk about productivity experience, instead of saying, okay, this is what other people challenges are and how we solve it, we need to start within our workforce. What are the challenges? And then look for the tech stack that matches it best. It could be a pre-built Copilot, it could be conversational AI, or it could be a very small lever, even like self-help, self-heal, a very basic transformation lever. Offshoring could be the answer to this, right? So it's not in the tech. It's a more inside out lens that will give you the answer.
Mhm.
I what we are seeing enterprises to take a very consulting led approach. So first invest in consulting from the service providers, do a POC, collaborate with them and contextualize that solution. And we're really seeing a lot of investment being done by enterprises to first do that instead of doing a big bang sort of transformation where there is expectation mismatch later or a mistrust earlier in the later stages. So, and this approach has helped a lot of enterprises in adopting these transformations, and even successfully achieving the expectations that they were targeting for.
Okay. If we move on, and that's all time we had for the Q&A, and we will come back with our answers to others. But if you move on to the next slide, we have some content for all of the our audience who are attending to go through and then just run through any questions that anyone has. Please do raise once you go through these. If you move on, and we launched a monthly newsletter on digital workplace, and I encourage all of you to go to our website and go to our LinkedIn page and then and then read about it. But Udit, if you can quickly maybe take 30 seconds and summarize what we are trying to do in that.
Yeah, so again, discussions, interactions like these, while great, I think these can be point in time. So like meeting, 6 months or once a year on these webinars. What we're trying to do is create more regular cadence and more touch points. So we obviously do that through our blogs where we keep talking about what's the best strategy. For example, the hybrid co-pilot strategy, this blog came out in March of this year, right? And if you see, that was the time when everyone was gung-ho about M65. We did call out, hey, you need to be cautious about it, and that might not be the best thing for you. So you can follow us on Everest Group for our blog. Similarly, we have a monthly newsletter where we try to summarize all the latest and the greatest happenings within the digital workplace, key deals, tech updates, which are the new solutions, service provider updates, and everything. So think of it like a monthly espresso shot or monthly dose of digital workplace insights.
Okay, very nice. I think that's all that we had for all of you, and thank you everyone for taking out time attending. And we will come back with answers to the questions that we could not. Uh, have a good rest of the day wherever you are, and we look forward to speaking with all of you again. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.